Playing most episodic games is like riding a roller coaster run by British Rail, where every time you start to get into it you're brought to a lurching halt for an unspecified amount of time, so the buffet car can take on more egg sandwiches. My point is, if you're going to start nicking ideas from television, nick one of the good ones, like putting out a little magazine every week saying exactly when the next episode of a show is going to be out. I mean, this is what kind of killed episodic gaming back when Half-Life 2 tried it. A cliffhanger's all very well, but if you're still hanging there 6 months down the line going, woo, probably going to fall any moment now, it's kind of hard to sustain the enthusiasm. I mean, I played the first episode of Life is Strange, and I'd like at least a rough idea of when the next one's coming so I can do enough research to figure out what the fuck language everyone's supposed to be talking. I mention this because I admire Resident Evil Revelations 2 right off the bat for having an actual release schedule, 1 episode a week for 4 weeks. Let's all beam down to Planet Sensible. I'm guessing they can do this because they made sure all the episodes were basically done beforehand. Then again, I could be wrong, as each episode does have a distinct thrown together in a week sort of vibe. This is a Resident Evil game, which in recent years have had less thought going into them than the average fart. Every Resident Evil game since RE3 has chosen its main protagonists by lining up the main characters of the first 2 games and throwing a dart. Do these people never age or do anything else with their lives? Has Chris Redfield ever made it all the way to the chemist and back without getting embroiled in zombie horror? Anyway, in this case the darts landed on Claire Redfield, Chris's sister from RE2, and Barry Buttons from RE1. They're part of a new humanitarian group called Terror Save, which has a long intro in the first episode going on about how nice they are and how you should totally trust them, so I'm assuming they'll turn out to be run by the Boston Kitten Strangler. I say assuming because at time of writing I've only played 3 out of the 4 episodes. I can only speculate as to which non-playable characters will betray us before the end. I'll put an educated guess on all of them. I won't even waste the effort of trying to be engaged by these characters, not that I had a choice. The standard RE previous protagonist is capable as all bollocks and reacts to each new mutant monster with a concerned frown to disguise their stifled yawn. No engagement there. To balance this out, both protagonists are given a sidekick with a personality, in the way a blind person employs a sighted dog. Barry Buttons gets a mysterious little spooky psychic girl who it seems will tag along with literally anyone who acknowledges her presence for more than a second, while Claire gets Barry's daughter Moira, whose main character trait is that she hates Barry for no adequately explored reason. In fact, let's not mince words, it's her only character trait, but she makes the most of it, always taking the time to remind us that she hates her dad even while halfway past a demon's tonsils. Speaking of halfway down the tonsils, so far I've been mostly trying to make Revelations 2 choke on my balls, but there are things I like about it. I quite like the setup. The first half of each episode is Claire and Moira trying to escape from an island where the standard Resident Evil unaccountably smug cartoon villain has trapped them in a sadistic game of survival, and the second half is Barry Buttons 6 months later retracing their steps and trying to figure out how big a spatula he's going to need to scrape up his daughter. I think it's a pretty good format for building the intrigue. Would have been even more effective if any of the characters consistently acted like they were in horrific life-threatening danger rather than like they were, say, attempting to navigate a crowded wedding reception without running into their ex. It's also a surprisingly low-key affair for the series, at least compared to 5 or 6, although a shooting massacre in the Transformers movie's visual effects department would be a bit low-key compared to 5 or 6, but it's a small focused group of characters in an enclosed situation, so it's managed to stay on the subtle side of absurdity so far. A helicopter crashes at one point and a factory catches fire, but it felt so utterly token that it's probably only there for the sake of habit. Even the graphics feel kinda understated and a bit behind the times, to the point that I wouldn't be surprised if the game had originally been intended for 3DS like the first one was, and all they did was polish the textures up a bit, taking the environments up from shitty and uninspired to merely uninspired. The monsters are a bit over-designed, but you know the standard monster introduction cutscene where the camera swings around and getting a nice juicy look at all the drippy contours before stopping at its face so it can roar at us like we just stepped on one of its carelessly strewn tentacle bollocks? That mostly doesn't happen, they're just kinda there. And even all 4 episodes combined will probably turn out to be a pretty short game. But pretty short also means not padded, and it's not like they're charging full price for it. No, the overall understated effect means Reverend's Rue does very little that offends me, but that also means it never makes me sit up, uncup my balls, and take notice. I guess I kinda hate the crafting system because it's so token and has a strong we had to put this in because people expect it now vibe, like a Stan Lee cameo. I like the character switching in the Barry segments because his pet gnome can see monsters through walls but only Barry can kill them, and that makes for an interesting mechanic, but I hate it in the Claire segments because it's just swapping out the gun for the torch, and it's the Doom 3 question again. Don't see why we couldn't just duct tape the torch to the gun and just give the other character a nice thumb to suck while they stay out of the fucking way. I guess it's the fucking co-op focus they introduced in 5 and which now sticks to the franchise like gum in its hair, but I do appreciate that the different characters have different roles, and astonishingly there's a split screen mode, which I will trumpet because lately gaming has been treating local multiplayer like the one old cucumber at the dildo party. So let's give it 6 strangled kittens out of 10. Play it once, then forget all about it. Let it slip in and out of your mind like an image of your mother during sex.